Stop, look and watch. It's Crazy Josh.
So while I work on the other responses from the past, there were a couple really recent ones that I wanted to address. And I'm actually going to address them in opposite order because, well, basically I gave Speedlearner I sent him a script that I had written that was actually a sequel to a video that I released like 2 weeks later. So some of the questions he asked about that script are either answered or need different answers because of the next installment. It was the Project Flux, What a 90s Kid installment. So basically, I'm just going to respond to his questions in the videos in the opposite order they came out. So here we go.
Your main character is Josh. I watched the thing intently to see what the main character name was for the female lead, and I didn't see her name specifically mentioned.
Okay, so the thing about Dakota's name, well, basically, the way I've been making these chapters of the story is really sporadic. I'll do one or two like every couple years. I try to do it as consistently as I can, but scheduling and time and all that. But basically, what happened was that Dakota was the script for What a 90s Kid was originally much longer, and it included our journey back to Whidbey Island from Canada. But we were only able to shoot a certain number of pages, and then we got busy with other things because we were still in high school at the time. And then she dyed her hair, and then she cut her hair, and then Dakota, moved off to college in a different part, or far enough away, and her hair was all different. Like, basically, she wasn't available anymore. And so I knew all this before I released the video. You have to understand, this video I completed it. Well, I basically completed it and showed it a couple years ago, but there were still some alterations I needed to make, and I'm actually really glad that I waited to release it online, just because there were a few little things that I was able to remove that over time I realized I didn't really like. But more importantly, I removed her name because my roommate will be taking over that role come the next chapter, and so I didn't really want to have to deal with the name being inconsistent, so I just sort of edited it out. Because there is a scene, their first scene in fact, Josh immediately says her name. It's this clip right here.
What the hell just happened?
Dakota, hi. What are you doing here?
And I cut that out because of the name change. So that's why her name isn't mentioned in the final cut.
What the hell just happened?
What are you doing here?
How did Josh persuade Sarah to come with him to meet his past self?
So why was Sarah in the car with that future version of Josh? Well, you know what? You're just going to have to keep watching to find out.
What was Dakota drinking, and what was Dakota reading? She was reading a book, and she quoted out of the book, but I don't know what the heck she was reading. So it was hard for me to see the title of the book.
Well, knowing Dakota, it was probably Dr. Pepper. And that book, I don't know what book that is, but I actually do plan on revisiting that book, which will require me to go back to that coffee shop and try to track down the book because I didn't pay attention to what book it was when we were filming, which I really should have. But I'm basically going to have to track it down based on the back cover, which is all you can see in the footage.
Why was Dakota chasing Josh?
Well, basic curiosity. This guy flashes in out of nowhere, says some nonsense about another Josh, runs off. He recognizes the area. Like, what's going on? Well, you're going to want to figure that out. So it was her curiosity that she was following him. She wanted to figure out what was going on.
If Josh time traveled, why would he expect his future self and Sarah to be at the same location? And how would Josh know when and where he was? And why didn't he ask Dakota where and when he was?
Well, the reason he didn't ask for the date and everything is basically at this point, he doesn't care. Like, he's been doing this time travel thing for long enough that it really doesn't matter when he is. He just has to figure out how to get back to when he's supposed to be. and he knew where he was because he recognized where he was. Like he recognized the building he was in and the surrounding area, and that's actually explained later on in the movie when he says that he's barely left the same town in all his travels. And he thought that the other Josh and Sarah might be back in the parking lot because, well, he wasn't planning on running into them before, but they were there. So, and they seemed to know that he would be there, so they would probably know that he would be there that time. They didn't, but he thought they might.
When Josh met the guy with the ball cap and the red jacket, why didn't he continue to touch Dakota?
Honestly, you got me there. We weren't paying attention, and in the 2 years it's been since we shot that, I never once even noticed that, so props to you.
When Josh asked Dakota if she had another time machine, why didn't she say, no, but I'm sure you can build another one?
That is a good point. That should have been one of the first things she says, and it basically is. I mean, in the script for the next chapter, that is one of the first things she says. She probably should have said it sooner, but I think for story reasons, it works better if we wait until the nenext chapter. All right, and those were basically all the questions. You did mention the differences between the 1998 and 2018. Because in the chapter I said that they were basically the same. I just meant like culturally, because people think that 20 years from now we'll have flying cars and all these crazy things. Well, things will basically be the same. That was really what I was trying to say. But now, like 2 weeks before, you responded to the script for the next chapter. So now I'll answer your questions about that.
Josh didn't immediately realize that the events that had happened were a direct result of the watch that he built?
Well, he did, yeah. So part of the problem, I probably shouldn't have sent you that script so early before the other installment, just because there's a lot of context missing, obviously. But yeah, now you know that he couldn't control it, because now you've ideally seen them all in order up to this point now.
Shelby should presume that Josh can build another watch because he has built the last one.
Well, yeah, they do talk about that in the script, and I think maybe the way it was written was a little vague, and maybe a rewrite or the way it's performed will make it more clear. But she was saying like, well, yeah, of course, how to make one. You better make another one.
How long did it take Josh to build the last watch?
Now that's an interesting question, and it will be answered in a future chapter. So you'll just have to wait. A lot of waiting.
What plan does Josh and Shelby devise so they won't upset the natural balance of the time stream until they can return to their own time period?
Well, I'm not too concerned about that. Like, as much as they do go through time, we haven't really addressed paradoxes and that sort of thing. And aside from making sure people are where they're supposed to be, that's not really going to be a big focus. It's time travel in this series that I'm doing is more like time just finds a way to course correct, so you don't need to worry too much about that. As long as you don't leave too big an impact, things will work themselves out.
Why didn't Josh bring spare components with him when he attempted to travel? Or at least a diagram or something?
Well, he doesn't really need a diagram just because he knows how to do it all in his head. Also, another important factor is that he had no idea that he was going to be going on this journey. Now, that's actually that'll be shown in an installment that has yet to be released that takes place at the beginning of his journey, basically. So you have to wait until then to see exactly how it happens. But the gist of it is he didn't know that he would be going on this journey, so he wasn't prepared.
Didn't Josh memorize the design of the microchip? Couldn't he find equipment that he could use to imprint the design on a piece of blank silicon?
Well, that's basically the whole point, saying that this particular motherboard was just so complex. It wasn't something that he could make. It was something that had to be obtained from a higher source.
Why does Josh's device have only a few uses? Is it because of a power source problem, or is it because the device will actually break after a few times?
Now that is actually an excellent point. And even when I was writing it, I was like, this feels arbitrary. But you pointing it out really brought it to the front, and I think I thought of a pretty clever reason as to why. And I won't say it here, but it should show up in the next iteration of the script.
Now, I do presume that you are aware that there is a difference between an inanimate object and a living organism.
That is another excellent point, and I really think I'm going to add in a bit about that in the script. Yeah, I'm going to think about it a bit more before I write anything, but that's another excellent point.
They end up with a third companion throughout all this. Do they have a plan to return that companion back to his proper place before they return back to their own?
Well, I don't want to give away too much now, but I definitely thought of that. Like, it certainly was not an oversight. There was a lot of thought put into how exactly this third companion will relate to the story continuing forward. And there is definitely a resolution to that. So those were all your questions from your most recent videos. And yeah, hopefully I informed you on the story a bit. You know, this is a story that I've really been enjoying telling. And honestly, if you go to the Project Flex playlist on my YouTube channel, some of the videos in there were made, up to 7 years ago. And obviously at that point, I did not have this huge overarching story in mind. But pretty recently, I went through the document of all the story beats and plot points and installments and chapters, and it was an absolute mess. So was the playlist to a certain extent. I revitalized the entire thing. It is so clean now. So the current plan, I'm not sure how I'm going to end this whole storyline going on, the Project Flux storyline. So I have 20 chapters planned. There are currently 10 already made and online. So, I'm halfway there. And there are 4 prologue chapters, I guess you would call them, which don't count to the overall number of chapters. So yeah, 20 chapters planned. I'm halfway there. It's only taken me 7 years. I really think I can get these next few chapters out, though, in the next couple years. And I've just been having a blast making this series and this upcoming installment, What a 90s Kid Part 2, which is just the working title. This is the one that is definitely the most I've worked on any of these chapters. I mean, I've only written the first act so far, but that's like 16 pages, and I'm going for, I'm thinking the final product might be 30 to 45 minutes, which, would be the longest thing, basically the longest thing I've done. So, and it's not filler or anything. Like, it's all straight to the point. So I'm thrilled about it, and I can't wait for everyone to see it. So yeah, those were all the questions Speedlearner had. I'm still working on the responses to previous videos, but for now, hopefully this will hold you over and answer some questions. So yeah, see you next time.
Choo choo.